guys, it's Sayback here. Welcome back to my podcast. Today we're going to be continuing the 5th book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Order of the Pheonix. Harry had just arrived at Grimmauld Place, and reluctantly, Molly let Sirius tell Harry, Hermione, Ron, Fred and George about the Order. Of course, though, Ginny was way underage, so she was sent up to bed. Now Molly stopped Sirius from saying any more, and Lupin agreed. All 5 of the children were sent back up to bed. Molly Weasley, Ron's mother, told Hermione to try not to wake up Ginny, as she'd probably be asleep. Fred said, "If Ginny's not awake waiting for Hermione to tell her absolutely everything, I'm a flobberworm." Mrs. Weasley got mad, and all 5 children were sent back up to bed. And in case you were wondering, Ginny was awake, and Hermione did tell her everything. Anyways, Harry and Ron went up to their room. They tried to go to sleep, but it was a bit hard when Fred and George kept apparating into their room. There was a loud crack, and someone was on Harry's bed, almost breaking his knees. Fred and George got off Harry's bed, and they had just apparated into Harry's room, which is kind of like teleporting. You learn how to teleport after your 6th year at Hogwarts, and Fred and George had completed their 7th, but they were still there to continue their education. They were there in Harry's and Ron's room to talk about what they just discussed downstairs with the Order. What was Voldemort's secret weapon? Ron said it might be something that causes an even more painful death, but Harry said that Voldemort has the Cruciatus curse to torture people, and then, of course, the killing curse to kill them. So, what could it be? Fred said that it's probably going to be hidden at Hogwarts, just like the Sorcerer's Stone, and Ron said that it's probably going to have to be a bit bigger than the stone, wouldn't it? But Fred and George didn't agree. They said size is no guarantee of power. Ginny, for example. Harry was confused. What did they mean by Ginny? And Fred and George said, "You've never been on the receiving end of her bat boogie hexes, have you? They're bloody awful." Then they heard Molly Weasley, or Mrs. Weasley, Ron's mother, come upstairs. She was peering against the door of Harry and Ron's room, trying to listen to what they were talking about. There was a loud crack sound, and Fred and George were gone. They apparated out of the room. "She doesn't trust us," Ron said, and both of them went to sleep. The next day, all 6 children were rounded up, and they were each given a cloth to tie around their mouths and anti-toxic spray. They were going to be getting rid of pixies, which were living in the house of the Black family, of course, number 12 Grimmauld Place. They went up to the room where all of the pixies were, and there was a large infestation. Mrs. Weasley gave them a demonstration. Once you open the latch, the pixies will come swarming out, and you have to spray them. The spray would basically freeze them on the spot. Then you'd pick them up and throw them into a bag, which would then be thrown out. And then she left the room. Why, you ask? Because someone had just entered the house. That someone was Mundungus Fletcher, the vile thief. Anyways, Molly Weasley went downstairs to see what the ruckus was on about. And, of course, Mrs. Black, who was Sirius's mother, well, she was dead, but she had a portrait, and that portrait could talk like many other portraits in the wizarding world. She was screaming her head off, and Sirius was trying to put the cloth on her portrait to shut her up. The 6 of the children, Fred, George, Ginny, Ron, Hermione and Harry, started spraying the pixies. Then in came Creature, the Black family's house elf. He was mumbling on and on about how they were letting blood traitors stay in the house. Those blood traitors were the Weasleys, because they were purebloods with no pure blood intentions like the Malfoys and the Black family had. Then in came Sirius. "Oh, Creature, would you just shut up?" he said. "You're always on and on about your blood traiting. Well, guess what? I'm the head of this house now, so you take orders from me and the Weasleys." "Oh, Sirius," Hermione said. "He's just out of his head. He doesn't know what he's saying." If you remember, last year in Goblet of Fire, Hermione started spew, which was kind of an association to give house elves their rights. So, of course, she cared for Kreacher. Sirius said that he knows exactly what he's saying, which he did. Kreacher was just a vile house elf who had no family left and had to take orders from Sirius because he was his master now. Hermione said, "Oh, but if you just set him free." Sirius quickly shut that idea down. He couldn't set him free. Kreacher would die of the shock. Besides, he knew way too much of the Order. He could go blabber away to someone else, and their whole plan would be ruined. Even in the midst of this, Kreacher kept calling Hermione a mudblood, and Fred, Ron, Ginny, and George said, "Don't call her that" at the same time. After they, got rid of the pixies, Harry noticed that Fred actually had a petrified pixie in his pocket. He said that he was going to use them for their joke shop, Weasley's Wizard Wheezers. Harry had used his winnings from the Triwizard tournament last year and given them to Fred and George so they could start their own joke shop. Fred and George were experimenting with sweets which could make you sick so you could skip class. Basically, you'd have to eat the orange side to get sick, and once you're out of class, you just sneak the purple side in and you're absolutely fine. But the vomiting didn't really stop when you ate the purple side, so they were still experimenting with some remedies, like pixie blood, which is what they were collecting pixies for. Then came Mrs. Weasley's shouting from downstairs. "We're not running a hideout for stolen goods," she yelled. "It feels good, you know," said Fred, "when she's yelling at someone else who's not us," as he gestured to himself and George. Mrs. Weasley was yelling at Mundungus Fletcher, who had brought in, stolen goods and thought that he could sell them there. But Mrs. Weasley was not going to let that happen. Sirius went downstairs to figure out what exactly was happening, and Kreacher was cleaning. Sirius told Kreacher to clean somewhere else, but he knew he wasn't actually cleaning. Kreacher left and, he couldn't really say anything about the Weasleys or Hermione being a muggle-born like that. After lunch, Sirius wanted to have a small chat with Harry. He took Harry into a room with a large tapestry with a family tree. It was the Black family tree. There were so many people on this tree, and every single one had married a pureblood. Then Harry noticed some burn marks on some circles on the tree. Some people had been taken off, and he couldn't find Sirius anywhere on there either. Sirius, he said that he hadn't looked at that tree for years. He almost forgot that it was there. And in the Black family, everyone was a pureblood, including Sirius. And everybody was a Slytherin, except Sirius. Sirius was a Gryffindor, and he'd been disowned by his family because, he didn't have their pureblood beliefs. Then, Harry also found out who Sirius was related to, like Tonks. Yeah, Nymphadora Tonks was actually related to Sirius. It's because, Bellatrix Lestrange. Her maiden name was Bellatrix Black, and she had two sisters, Narcissa Black, who then became Narcissa Malfoy, Draco's mother, and Andromeda Black, who soon became Andromeda Tonks. Andromeda Tonks was taken off of the family tree, so Tonks was never even on there. The reason her mother was taken off the tree was because, she married someone who didn't really live up to their pureblood expectations. She married a muggle-born, Ted Tonks, who was Nymphadora Tonks' father. Soon later, Harry figured out that Sirius was related to Draco, to the Malfoys, and Sirius said that all pureblood families are related. because, well, that's just how it works. Not all half-blood and muggle-blood families are related, but pure-blood families are just related, mainly because, well, most purebloods marry a pureblood, except Andromeda Tonks and a few others. Molly and the Weasleys were also related to Sirius, because they were also purebloods. But of course, Harry was not even close to finding the Weasleys on those trees. Because, well, the Weasleys are what they call blood traitors. Because they don't have their stupid pureblood mania. Bellatrix Lestrange, who was a very, very supportive follower of Voldemort, was also related to Sirius. "Bellatrix is your cousin?" asked Harry. Sirius had a very grim look on his face. "She's nowhere near my cousin. Sure, she's biologically my cousin, but I'd never accept her as one. She is not family at all." Sirius and his brother, who was Regulus Black, were also not on the tree. Regulus Black was a Death Eater. Death Eaters, if I haven't mentioned, are followers of Lord Voldemort, which is exactly what the Black family would want you to become, a Death Eater. And, well, the thing is, Regulus was Sirius's brother who was a Death Eater, but soon after, he realised he didn't really want to do this, and he realised it was wrong. But you can't really hand in your resignation form when you're a Death Eater. It's servants for life. So when Regulus mentioned that he wanted to back down, obviously Voldemort killed him. Or probably one of his followers, Sirius said. "I doubt my brother was ever that important for Lord Voldemort to kill him himself." Now, I have to mention, Harry was going to have a hearing on the very same day, which was why he was really worried, and Sirius, being his godfather, immediately recognized that. "You shouldn't be too worried," Sirius said. "According to the law of magic, well, an underage wizard can't perform magic, but you were doing it to protect yourself, or else you would have gone to Dementor's kiss, which would have stolen your soul. So technically it should be allowed, and I'm sure that the Ministry will understand. Besides, he conjured a full-size Patronus. How impressive is that?" Then Harry got the feeling that he was actually going to be expelled from Hogwarts, and he asked Sirius quietly, "If they do expel me, am I going to be allowed to stay here and live with you?" Sirius wanted to say yes with his whole heart, but he just knew he couldn't. But then he didn't want to disappoint Harry, so he just said, "We'll think about it." Then it was finally time for Harry's hearing. Mr. Weasley was going to take him there. Mr. Weasley worked at the Ministry in the Muggle Artifacts Decree. That basically meant that he works all day with Muggle objects, which is something he'd love to do. I mean, we figured out that in Harry's second year, Mr. Weasley had enchanted a car to fly, a Muggle car. What wizards actually have a car? Anyways, Mr. Weasley was going to take Harry to his hearing. They went by train, and then finally, they got to London. Now, obviously, the Ministry wasn't actually in London. They got into a phone booth, like those really, really popular red phone booths. He typed in some numbers into the dialer, and then suddenly it started shaking, and kind of like an elevator, the phone booth platform went down all the way. Obviously, though, most Muggles could see that phone booth, so they'd actually not seen anything of what had just happened, and they could still use the phone booth normally. Tonks had told Harry before he went to his hearing that Amelia Bones was in charge of it, and she's a fair witch, not like Fudge, who's the Minister of Magic. He would do anything to get Harry expelled from Hogwarts. Absolutely anything. He'd want Harry to get expelled from Hogwarts. I mean, what else would he want to do? Anyways, Harry, well, he'd never been to the Ministry before, and he was quite distant from the magical world. That's the main reason he was mad when he first came to number 12 Grimmauld Place, because everyone was keeping him so distant, especially Dumbledore. He was 15 now, and yet he was still living with his muggle aunt and uncle. He wasn't the happiest about it, and he was especially mad when he didn't even know anything about the Order, until, of course, Sirius forced everyone to tell him. Anyways, Harry reached the Ministry, and they were going down to the 3rd floor, which was where Arthur's office was. He wanted to check something because the hearing wasn't for another 30 minutes. Then, when he did check that one thing, he realised that they had changed the time. He didn't know about that time changing, and it was so sudden and so close to the real time. The hearing had been moved to be 30 minutes earlier, so Harry and Mr. Weasley were running 10 minutes late. They rushed there, and, of course, Mr. Weasley couldn't go inside, and some wizard outside the room confiscated Harry's wand, which wasn't actually allowed. Anyways, Harry gave the wand because he didn't know it wasn't allowed, and went inside. Inside there was a chair with chains on it. It looked just like the chair that Bellatrix Lestrange was sitting on when Harry looked into the Pensieve last year. Anyways, Harry sat down, and thankfully the chains didn't bound him to the chair. In front of him, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of Ministry workers all gawping at the boy who lived. Then Fudge spoke first. Late. Not the best first impression, huh, Mr. Potter? And Harry said, we didn't know the timings had changed. We thought it was going to be 30 minutes later. Then Fudge said, always expect the unexpected. What, like Harry was supposed to expect the Dementors to just appear in Little Winging? Anyways, Fudge actually started the hearing. We're here for a violation of the laws of magic. An underage wizard has performed the Patronus charm in Little Winging on August 1st. He should be expelled from Hogwarts, and that's why this hearing is being held. Then it began. First of all, Fudge asked Harry why he would perform the Patronus charm, and that too, why in front of a muggle, Dudley Dursley. Was it to show off his magic, a small stunt, or perhaps to scare the muggle? Any of these would get him expelled. Then Harry started speaking. It was because of the Dementors. There were 2 Dementors. Then Fudge interrupted him. What's the point of the hearing if you're not going to listen to him? I'm sorry to interrupt what must have been a perfectly practiced or rehearsed story, but Dementors in Little Winging, in Privet Drive. That's not possible, young man. Dementors are controlled by the Ministry. No one in the Ministry would send Dementors to Little Winging. Now, if Dementors weren't sent to Little Winging, how did 2 Dementors get there and attack Harry and Dudley? That was the question which was yet to be answered in this hearing. Then came in, well, in a way, Harry's lawyer. Of course, Harry didn't know Dumbledore was coming. That's right, Dumbledore came to help Harry in his case. Why would he want Harry to get expelled? Of course not. Dumbledore walked in, and he started presenting Harry's case. According to the magic law, underage wizards are allowed to use magic in life-threatening situations. And if getting the Dementor's kiss is not a life-threatening situation, what is? Fudge yelled, there weren't any Dementors. It's just a stunt that this young man pulled off to impress or scare a muggle. Dumbledore sighed. Then Fudge continued, can we not forget that this young man blew up his own aren't in his third year at Hogwarts. Dumbledore interrupted. We're here to talk about the Dementors and the Patronus charm. Any past mistakes are not to be spoken about here. And what about all the mischief and mayhem he's been doing at Hogwarts? Again, said Dumbledore, we're here to talk about this recent event, and anything that happens in Hogwarts is my concern, not the Ministry's. I picked the appropriate punishments, and if needed, suspension or expulsion, not the Ministry. I'm the headmaster. Then Dumbledore continued, you confiscated this young man's wand before the hearing. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to snap the wand in half until after he's expelled, let alone confiscate it. Dumbledore continued yet again. Besides, why are we even holding a hearing for a reason so idiotic as underage magic? We should be using these hearings for actual criminals with actual serious charges, not to get some child expelled from Hogwarts. Then Fudge asked if there was any witness, like you would in a normal court case. And luckily for Harry, there was. Mrs. Arabella Figg. Yes, Dumbledore said. A squib. Can a squib see Dementors? Asked Amelia Bones. Yes, indeed they can, because they're born into magical families, just can't perform magic. Of course, Harry was the only wizard who was ministered to live in Privet Drive, but squibs weren't on the list, and Percy, who was the scribe of the meeting, was asked to go check that. He was writing everything that everyone said down, and he was the assistant of, Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic. Percy didn't even once look at Harry or acknowledge his existence or acknowledge the fact that, Harry's really close to the Weasleys. Though I'm pretty sure Percy didn't even consider himself a Weasley then. He abandoned his family, shoved the door on his mother's face when she came to his house to ask him to please come back. What kind of child was that? Anyways, then Mrs. Figg was called in, and she answered some questions, like what exactly she saw. She said that she saw 2 Dementors attacking 2 children in Little Winging. Then she rambled on and on about cats. All right, that's enough, Fudge said. What did they look like? Then Mrs. Figg said, one was quite large, while the other one was pretty skinny. Not the children, Fudge said. What did the Dementors look like? And Mrs. Figg said that they were tall, creepy creatures, and the second she walked into the alleyway, she felt like all happiness was sucked out of her life. She felt like she could never feel that glimmer of happiness ever again. And that's exactly what Dementors make you feel. Then, finally, they had the vote. All in favour of pressing charges, Amelia Bones said, and they raised their hand if they wanted to expel Harry in the way. Quite a lot of people raised their hands. Now, all in favour of clearing all charges. 55% of the hearing raised their hands, including Amelia Bones. Harry was off. He was actually off. He could go to Hogwarts, his home. He walked outside, got his wand back, and hugged Arthur Weasley. Lucius Malfoy walked by and said, Arthur, aren't you supposed to be on the 3rd floor? The Muggle degree. Yes, said Arthur, but you don't need to know why I was down here, if you already don't. Then everyone started walking out. Percy was last, and he didn't even bat an eye at his father. Arthur dropped Harry home and went back to work. Ginny, Fred and George were doing this victory chant. He got off. He got off. Mrs. Weasley begged them to shut up, and she told Sirius and Remus the wonderful news. Ginny, Fred and George were still chanting their army chant. He got off! He got off! Hermione and Ron were ecstatic that Harry wasn't going to be expelled from Hogwarts and he could stay there for his last 3 years. He got off! He got off! Oh, shut up! Mrs. Weasley yelled. Harry, come on, please, have lunch. You barely even had breakfast this morning. He got off! He got off! Fred, George, Ginny, that's enough! Mrs. Weasley yelled. Ron happily ate beside Harry. If Dumbledore was there, of course you got off. I mean, why wouldn't you? Fudge is scared of Dumbledore, that he's going to overtake him as minister. Then Harry talked about how Dumbledore hadn't even looked at him, talked to him, acknowledged his existence. Fred, George and Ginny were still singing, He got off, he got off. Then Ron said, I bet Dumbledore turns up this evening to celebrate with us. You know, like to talk to us about the hearing and how you're not going to be expelled. Mrs. Weasley said he's not going to be able to. I mean, how busy of a man would he be? He got off, he got off, he got off. Shut up, roared Mrs. Weasley. That effectively did the job. I think I've talked about enough in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed and make sure to tune in for next week's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to me on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts if you enjoyed this podcast or any others that I've done before. Hope you tune in next week. Until then, mischief managed.